You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Cricket Podcast. Today we have a special guest joining us for the show. He's recently represented Joburg Super Kings in South Africa 20. He's lifted the 100 trophy for Southern Brave, and he's taken a wicket for England, bowling his left arm slingshots. It's Sussex all-rounder George Garton. How are you doing?
Very good, thanks, Ross. Thanks for having me.
You're very, very welcome. I think it's important we get something out of the way first, George. We did used to play each other for our the same team for Three Bridges.
We did, yeah.
I looked up the scorecard from a couple of the games, and there's one game where I was looking at it, and it reminded me we were playing at Cookfield, and in the notes is that I got run out. So this shows you how good I am at cricket. I got run out attempting a 5. I'm not sure that's ever.
Okay.
What was happening there?
Well, to be fair, at Cookfield, there is a tree, isn't there, in the middle of the pitch? So maybe the ball went round there and I don't know what you were doing. But...
Yeah, hiding one. Yeah, run out for a 5. But there we go. That's the extent of it. George, you're obviously back fit and firing now. I want to go down the IPL route first. So quite a lot of our listeners have sent some questions in, and they are big India fans, and we want to play to the biggest cricket market, right? We're completely
absolutely. Why not?
We're big capitalists, right? So we might as well take advantage of it. So, Jack, do you want to start off with some IPL questions?
Well, yeah. I mean, as you say, Ross, IPL's around the corner. I think we had a big debate on our Patreon Discord that we run this week, and it was about the biggest franchise in the world, or which was the biggest franchise in the world, and we came to the conclusion that it might have been RCB. You are an ex-RCB alumni, so we thought we'd ask you straight off the bat, what was it like joining cricket's version of Manchester United? How did it feel playing with Kohli? What's the Villiers like in the changing rooms?
So that's not one question. We'll start with that.
Oh,
yeah. That's how we do interviews, by the way. We ask 10 questions.
Rapid fire.
Yeah, literally just go 10 and then go. We just don't do anything.
Perfect. Well, yeah, it was my first ever franchise gig. So to be chucked kind of straight in the deep end and go into, as you said, one of the biggest teams in the world of any sport. I didn't realise until I think they followed me on social media actually how powerful their fan base is, and I was told by one of their media people that I think they're the 7th biggest franchise in the world of any sport online.
Wow!
And that includes football, NFL, basketball, everything. So you're dealing with an incredibly large and incredibly passionate fan base, which definitely has a huge positive when you're playing well. I found out after playing badly one game that it can be a little bit of a negative. But no, I loved my experience there. It was a different one because of COVID. We were in Dubai, so I didn't quite get the full kind of Indian atmosphere in the games, which looked incredible, I think. And that's something that kind of AB and Virat and other people touched on, was the home advantage that they have when they play at their home games. And that's where they really said that the support comes into its own, and everyone there is just rooting for RCB, and especially AB and Virat and those guys. So it was a little bit different in Dubai, but I kind of got to experience, it feels a little bit like you're a footballer because everything's looked after, like you just focus on the cricket and everything outside of cricket's taken care of. Kind of taken back a little bit from when I flew to Dubai. I landed and I got taken off the plane first. I didn't even go and get my bags. They were already off the plane. And then I just got into a car and I was like, oh, do I not need to get my bags? And they said, oh, no, your bags are already in the car.
That's a security risk. I've left bags untended.
Yeah, my bags were left unattended. But no, just like, and it's not something you expect, but those little touches mean a massive deal when you've been flying for 10 hours or whatever it is. To then have little bits like that, you go, wow, blimey, they're really thinking about me. And I was a replacement for another player, but you turn up to the hotel and they've got a big team mural on the wall and my face is there. And it's not because I'm a late addition, I'm not on there. they've put everybody in just really small attention to detail that actually means a lot to a player, especially someone who's his first experience and doesn't quite know what's going to happen.
What was it like? Was it like you had like linseed oil next to the bed, like bat tape kind of in the wardrobe?
Yeah, not quite that much kit, but you joke there were, because it was a bubble. We did have our own hairdresser. That was quite funny. Few guys rocking some interesting lids. But yeah, that was kind of the first thing I noticed, and then how bloody hot Dubai was, because we were there October time and it was about 47 degrees.
Yeah, so it's when you can literally, it's like you're drinking the air, isn't it? When you're there, it's that humid.
Yeah, I remember opening the balcony door, thinking, "Oh, that looks nice," and then my whole room just fogging up instantly, and then quickly shutting it and realizing that the next day I had to play a game, which was a day game, and thinking, "Cool, I'm going to need a lot of sun cream."
What was the process for like being picked up? As you said, it was COVID year. It was kind of a split tournament, I think, wasn't it? And
Sure.
you know, it wasn't the traditional, big auction. Your name's up.
Yeah, no, I wasn't sat there at the draft, kind of cheering and celebrating with a beer or whatever.
What was the vibe? Was it like just you got a phone call from your agent one day and it was like, RCB want to talk?
Yeah, almost missed that step too. That it was while the 100 was going on, which kind of shows the impact the 100 has, is that the IPL teams are looking at it and paying attention to it. And I just remember getting a WhatsApp from Mike Hesson, who's the kind of director of cricket at RCB, and he was head coach that year too. And it said, "Hi George, it's Mike Hesson. Would love to have a chat. Please, can you give me a ring?" So it almost skipped the agent part, and I phoned him up, and he asked if I would be keen to play, and I kind of said, "Well, yeah, it's a bit of a silly question. Obviously, I'd love to play." And then that's where the agent gets involved, and we spoke about the kind of ins and outs of when I was going to fly, because Sussex were making finals day, that I went out a little bit later and missed a couple games. But yeah, that's kind of how it started. Was he just messaged me and I gave him a ring.
Simple as that. Maybe text him now and just be like, "Look, I've heard you got some injuries. Fancy me coming back."
Yeah, he's got a bad shout.
I do know a few people that probably do that, but I'm definitely not one of them. But to touch on your point about Virat and AB and the other guys in the dressing room, I think especially Virat was impressive because I didn't quite realise how much stuff he does outside of cricket that he's made to do, because he was India captain and he was RCB captain. And he is one of the most incredible human beings I've met that can switch himself off from all of that and just be Virat Kohli, the human being, who is very different to the guy you see on the pitch, who's running around like a madman because we got a wicket and shouting and screaming and incredibly desperate to win. Off the pitch, he's very reserved. He cares a lot about people and would go out his way to have a chat to make sure you're okay, talk about things. And it didn't matter whether you were Glenn Maxwell or the guy they picked, the local lad they picked as an emerging player for 20 lakh, which was a difference that I didn't see all of the local lads do. There seems to be a bit of a separation between the playing 11 and then the guys not playing.
Yeah.
But you could see that Virat really made an effort to make everybody feel included.
It's quite interesting on that point, George, because the RCB, like typically they go, right, we're going to spend all of our money on a few superstars, and then we'll pack it out with quite a few like cheaper domestic players. And so you're saying actually RCB and Kohli were going out of their way to actually have that, to avoid having that separation. Is quite an interesting piece that people actually might not have picked up on.
Yeah, for sure. And especially I found it from Virat because he was still captain, that whenever there was a team meeting or a team bonding exercise, whatever it was. He made sure he mucked right in, and he got all the younger lads involved. And I know from previous teams, it can be quite easy for the senior players to sit off a little bit and know that they're happy and comfortable. But yeah, everyone, it was a real proper team. I felt like everyone mucked in, everyone got stuck in, and especially with Virat kind of learning about his life and his family life and things that you don't really understand without having face-to-face contact with a bloke, and asking him about growing up and how he deals with the pressures and everything like that was fascinating. And he genuinely an incredible human being for putting up with or being able to cope with all the pressures that come with being basically India's biggest superstar of cricket.
Yeah. And that must be quite surreal for you, right? You would have been what, 23, 22, 23?
Yeah, 23, I think.
Yeah. And to have someone like that, just like you're meeting like Messi, right? If you're a footballer, you're literally walking in, just being
Pretty
like,
much, yeah.
oh yeah, just having a chat and just being like, yeah. So what do you do is when you're looking after your cricket bats? Do you store them inside for the winter, or what do you do?
No, that is a bloke with a lot of cricket bats. Like the occasional time you saw his room open, because he's quite introverted off the pitch. He very much likes his own space, which is very understandable because he's in the public eye a lot. But the occasions his door was open, there were a lot of cricket bats in there. And he said that like companies want to give him cricket bats because they want him to try their bats out, which I think is quite a nice place to be when you basically get given bats from people that don't even sponsor you.
Well, it sounds fantastic, right? And as you said, it's a bit disappointing that I say you only got to play in the IPL in the UAE. It's still, you played in the biggest competition in the world, right? There's so many eyeballs, especially on those games that you were playing in. Like, how do you go out and think, right, I've got to go and perform, and I've got literally like tens of millions of people watching me and following me here?
Yes, and I genuinely have never thought of it like that.
That's probably why you made it as a professional cricketer, and we get worried when we play in London fields. Like, it's
yeah, who's the bloke with his dog staring at me? Have I not put my pads on the right way around? Or what? It's a good question. I don't think it's something you can think about, because no matter who you're playing for, you're trying to give you 100%, and you know that if you do well and the team does well, like the fans will be happy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd never really thought about it. Like, you obviously understand who you're representing and the kind of the scale of it, but not really that pressure from, I guess they have almost 100 million fans. Yeah, I've not really thought about it.
Yeah, and I don't mean to ruin it, right? I don't want to be the person who. So what was the point when you got
dark room and just rock backwards and forwards?
What was the point when you realised you think you got the yips and just like, no, this guy used to play cricket with, like, said this thing, I just can't get it out of my head. Well, let's bring it back to something a little bit less serious. Just how big is Kyle Jamieson? Because
that's a fair question. He is a very big human being, which Glenn Maxwell nicknamed him Pencil from one of the first days, because he just said he looked like a big pencil. Like a very easy Australian, just you look like a pencil, so I'll call you Pencil.
There we go.
But he's a lovely, typical Kiwi, but he's a very big human being.
Yeah. And like behind the scenes stuff. So how do they keep all you guys interested, right? Because you're in the bubble. You're in what?
Sure.
I'm assuming a pretty flashy hotel, but ultimately you get bored, right? It's really you're not in prison. You're in a very nice prison kind of thing. But it's like
true.
Yeah. How did they keep you sane around it? What was the things that you guys were doing around it?
Yeah, so that it was a whole new thing, the bubble kind of life, and it genuinely was horrendous. You felt like you were in a prison, just a very nice one. But I have to admit, you're in Dubai, the weather's lovely. We were on a golf course that we could play whenever we wanted, and we had our own private pool. We had a team room which was incredible. You had F1 simulators, table tennis tables, massage chairs, movie room, table tennis table, basically anything you could think of. And they'd really gone out their way to make it feel like home. And they explain that they do it for their kind of base when they play in India too for the IPL. Because obviously they travel, but we were stuck in the same hotel for 3 weeks. But yeah, it certainly didn't feel too bad. And they did a very good job at kind of making it feel as happy as possible.
Was there any kind of like competitiveness? Was there any kind of the jokers of the pack doing like pranks around the hotel? What were you thinking there, or is it in my head? I've kind of got a mixture of being at university versus a really professional sports environment, and I can't quite match it up in my head.
Yeah, it's similar. There's a lot of maybe just a bit less drinking, but there was a lot of competitiveness with table tennis.
Right.
So you had especially a few of the coaches, Virat, Maxi. I remember Siraj was very good. Yuzi Chahal was quite good. So there was quite a competitive group of table tennis players. And a lot of noise going on. And I didn't realise Indian people love karaoke. So they would often bring out the microphone and sing karaoke, which was interesting. I didn't hang around for long, but
you didn't get up on stage?
No, well, there weren't any English songs, so I was struggling a little bit. But yeah, the lads loved it. They'd just no inhibitions and really quiet guys that you wouldn't really think of. Just jumping straight in and just letting loose.
I must say, it's always one of those things I find fascinating when you're watching the games in India, right? And you've got people going absolutely crazy. They're dancing, everyone's cheering, etc. And you don't see anyone with a beer in their hand. And I'm just like, you would never get that in England, right? You know, everyone would rather sit down quietly and just be like, well, I'll have a sandwich. Like they wouldn't be up doing anything else unless they were children, right? So the fact that you've got the guys going, give me that microphone. I need to sing Frank Sinatra is or whatever the Bollywood version of Frank Sinatra is.
They're certainly passionate with their singing as much as their cricket.
Yeah. Well, shifting gear a little, let's move continents. Let's go to Africa.
Sure.
So yeah, we got to see each other in Newlands. I think I've never been more jealous of someone being able to say you've played at Newlands. Like it was just an incredible spectacle. Like so is Newlands your favourite ground you play at, or you've played at, or is there one that tops it that we're just not aware of?
I think it's the most beautiful ground with the table there, table mounted and everything. I usually prefer the grounds that I win at. So it's tricky. I think in England, Lords is the most prestigious place to play. But for a whole atmosphere and energy point of view, the Oval is the best ground to play at. Especially when we played our semi-final in the 100 there 2 years ago. Remember finishing the game and thinking, "Cool, that was bloody special." But I think Newlands, actually, our home ground in Johannesburg was incredible. I'd not been to the Bullring before the Wanderers, so to step out there and call that our home ground with the support we got was a bloody cool ground. But I don't think there's one in particular that stands above the rest.
No,
I think Adelaide, the Adelaide Oval, has to be number one for me though.
Okay, fine. That's next on the list. Australia's next. That's next.
Sure.
Yeah,
we'll stay in Africa for now.
No, so when it comes to obviously you're playing in all these different franchises and you're going all around the world. What is it kind of like? Because you're kind of treading the path that's not really been trod before, right? There's a few trailblazers have kind of come into it, but now you're truly a global cricketer. Like you've played in what 5 of the franchise competitions, I think.
100 IPL, South Africa 20, Big Bash, T10. Might be missing one, but yeah, that's 5.
Yeah. Have you played the PSL yet?
No.
No, not yet. Okay.
No.
That's the next one.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. So as you're getting used to it, how are you preparing for this? Right, because it's not like you've got. I'm guessing you've got the regiment from Sussex to kind of keep you fit and be like, right, this is what you're doing, and they're kind of your base. So they're almost like your mum looking after you, making sure you're eating right and do whatever else. But then I'm guessing all these other places. How do you adapt to those kind of different cultures and different team environments, or is everything kind of just like a bit of a white label and they're much of a muchness?
Sure. No, it's very different depending on where you go, which is one of the great things of being able to experience it and travel the world. But it is something that you have to learn yourself. I was lucky that a few of the first teams I played for, a few of my mates played in like CJ, Salty, Tamal. So especially with CJ, talking to him about, because when you play franchise cricket, as you said, you're not with your mum, so you haven't got someone telling you, oh, you need to do a gym session, you need to do a running session. I think you should take today off. I think you should eat this or that or whatever it is. You're very much fending for yourself.
Yeah, and famously, your mum is a personal trainer and nutritionist, as you just got to know.
That would be helpful, but she's not. So yeah, there were a lot of mistakes I made early on, just being naive and thinking, oh bloody hell, this is brilliant. I don't have to do anything, and I did injure myself. Not really at a fault of my own, but because of circumstances, and not quite being grown up enough, and accepting, right, everything's in my court. I have to make time to go to the gym, because you have a lot of spare time and you can just get caught up in putting golf balls in your bedroom or going for a coffee with someone and actually not utilizing that time. So yeah, it's very individual. It's what lads like to do. Some people find that stretching and yoga and that kind of stuff suits them best. Other people prefer doing a lot of gym. I think for batters, it's a bit easier because there's not that strain on your body, especially in T20 cricket. Whereas as a bowler or an all-rounder, when you're playing a few games in a row, you have to be careful of when to train, when to take rest, which comes from experience. And I feel like I'm a lot better now than I certainly was a couple of years ago.
We had Emma Gardner on the show, who was one of the ECB's nutritionists.
Yeah, I know Emma.
And she was saying that getting fast bowlers to eat was the real problem, because it's like almost like the last thing you want to do when you come off the cricket pitch is going to go and sit and try and consume like 2,500 calories and try and keep your body.
Yeah. Up. She's told me off a few times for not eating enough. But that was another thing I learned with Emma, funnily enough, in Barbados, was I thought I ate really healthily and went through my diet, and she said, well, but I explained times where I felt tired or fatigued, and she said, well, you're just not eating enough. And kind of to put that in perspective, for a T20 game, if the game's at 6 p.m, they want you to eat breakfast, big lunch, then potentially a small meal you leave 2 hours before the game, so just before then.
Right.
So maybe at 3 o'clock. Then you're going to do whatever you're doing on the pitch. If you bat first, don't eat anything. If you're bowling, straight after bowling, you have a protein shake. Then you have food at the ground. Then you go back to the hotel and they want you to eat again. And then have like a recovery protein shake before bed. So your average... Boy,
the farts in a cricket player's bedroom must be absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, the team bus isn't great.
You talked a little bit about moving between like different franchises and stuff. You've got a bit of experience with England now. We're talking about the England nutritionist there. What's that like as an environment, and how was it for you stepping into that versus some of these different places that you've played? Was it just sort of like another job, or did it feel special? Sure. I'm sure it did in some way. Or how did it feel special?
It definitely has that little extra feeling to it. my dream growing up was to play for England, and it still is. So to be in the England dressing room is always going to feel a bit more special than playing for anybody else. But I have to. That dressing room's probably the best one I've been in, just for how safe it feels, how comfortable, and how welcoming they are. I'm certainly no big fish, and I felt just as welcome and happy to speak in that dressing room as anybody else in there. So I was incredibly grateful for my teammates and the coaches and everyone, the support staff, to make the dressing room feel like that.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Go, Ross.
Okay. I was going to say, when you've got people like Ben Stokes, Joss Butler, or Owen Morgan, I'm guessing is who you played under.
Yeah, Morgan was captain.
Yeah. And to be that's one of those things, right? When you tell your grandkids or whatever else, it's like, okay, so you talk about your England career, you'll be like, yeah, no, I played under World Cup winning captain, kind of did all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't think people realize how big they actually are, right? At this point in time, they're almost not appreciated a little bit because they're always been in that public eye. So
sure, yeah. I think especially with someone like Stokes, he's just as big as both of them, but because people reminisce of the old days and think of Ian Botham, he gets maybe he's a bit more spoken about than what Stokes is doing at the moment. I think, to be fair, both of them stats are pretty ludicrous, but as like an all-rounder for England, same with Freddie. I think what Stokes is doing is, especially now he's captain, maybe potentially bigger than both of them. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few years.
Well, Top Gear presenter, if we're anything to go by.
What if Freddie had a chip band as well, didn't he? He could do
that. So and playing for England, so yeah, huge achievement. Obviously, Sussex has been your home for quite a while. How's your fitness ahead of this season? And are we going to see you in the white ball stuff, or are we going to see you rocking out in the county championship and seeing you play as much as possible?
Sure, yeah, no, I want to play every game. Touch wood. After the horrendous year I had last year because of the blood clot in my lungs, I'm fully fit. I've got a new desire to play. I guess re-energized thoughts of cricket. Having missed so much last year, I'm really desperate to play and do well this year. So I've told the coaching staff, look, I want to play every game possible. They've been very good at managing workloads and understanding that probably can't play every game because we do play a lot of cricket, but finding appropriate rest times and then also playing as much as possible.
It's quite an exciting season ahead, or it looks like it's going to be quite an exciting season ahead for Sussex. What with Steve Smith coming over and Pujara again, it caused a few rumblings on social media. Steve Smith being picked up from people who thought he might be using it as a warm up for the Ashes. From your point of view, though, are you looking forward to playing with him, and what do you think you'll get out of playing with sort of one of the modern greats there?
Yeah, of course I am. I think it's a bit silly when people say, "Oh, he's using it for prep." Well, if he gets out 4 games in a row, it's not good prep, is it? So, he's coming here. He's going to put bums on seats, which is great for Sussex. He's going to spend time in a dressing room with a young team that we've got, and being able for a young batter or bowler or whoever it is to be able to rub shoulders with one of the best players ever. Stats-wise, you've got nothing to lose. Everything's to gain. The conversations you can have on the pitch, off the pitch, for young lads wanting to become leaders, to learn how he deals with leadership and everything like that. That there's literally no negatives. So I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to bowling at him, learning how I can get better myself at bowling and batting. And as I said previously, with people like Virat and AB and other big name cricketers, you learn a lot more than just cricket when you're around them. You learn life skills, you learn how to be a better human being, you learn how to deal with pressure on and off the pitch. So it's not just the cricket skills you pick up, it's a lot of extra stuff on top of that.
Yeah, and if you work out sort of anything from his technique that could help some of the England boys later in the summer, are you gonna? Have you got a plan to pass that on without him noticing?
Or if he gives me little snippets or whatever of what he's working on, then I feel like I wouldn't be an Englishman if I didn't relay that a little bit. But I think he's smart enough to keep his cards close to his chest when it comes to that.
That's George's ticket into the Ashes squad. That's what
Yeah,
it really is. It's just like yeah.
Steve Smith specialist, yeah.
Exactly. We're actually missing a third team member on the show. So we normally have a guy called Max on the show,
Sure.
And he's coming back from holiday. When we were saying that you're coming onto the show, we were just like, well, you bowl what 90 miles an hour you've been clocked at in a game?
Yeah, top speed 94, something like that.
Yeah, well, that's obscene, isn't it? Really. And Max is quite a diminutive figure, probably about 5'2", and was given it the big un, saying that he reckons he could survive an over from you in a cricket net. I'm not convinced.
I've just seen this question. Yeah.
So I reckon it feels like this is something we should put to the test. So if you are around in the summer and there is a free morning, I think we should get Max, get him padded up, and get you to fire one down at him.
He's always welcome to come to Hove if he wants to.
Yeah, there we go. I think he'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
How do you reckon you do, Jack? How do you reckon you do?
I don't know. I mean, it's.
I might die. My technique is
how
that
long?
bad.
If you 94 miles an hour, what have you got? About half a second to get to square leg.
I have to admit, I haven't bowled that quick for a while, so it'd be a little bit slower. But
it kind of brings me on to the 100. So we're not with too many questions left. But I was reading a couple of articles around it, and obviously following your career a little bit, you've developed more than just having kind of the 90 mile an hour, like the rocket up your sleeve, right? Actually, you talk around quite openly around developing cutters, using the slower ball, and with your slingy action, actually, it was really quite effective. Like you saw, Malinga is the greatest fast bowler to play in the IPL, right? So how is that development kind of going at the moment, and have you added those even more stuff to your repertoire for the head of this season?
Sure, yeah, it's a good point because I think the quicker you bowl, the more flashy it looks, and it's kind of the headline grabber. But realistically, the blokes are so good now that unless you bowl 105 miles an hour, which nobody does, they're going to whack you. And if you don't have variations of pace or really good control, it doesn't matter how fast you bowl, they're going to whack you. It obviously helps to be able to like crank it up a little bit, but I certainly learned, especially around the England dressing room. I remember Johnny Bairstow told me on one of the first days. I was asking him about his batting and whatnot, and my bowling and how I can improve. And that was one of the things he said. He said, when you make this step up, it doesn't matter how fast you bowl. Like blokes like quick bowling.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to learn kind of how to get people out in different ways than just running in and trying to bowl as fast as you can. Mm-hmm. And I think that came a little bit for me through injury. So I tore my side 4 times from the end of 2017, 28, kind of start of 2018.
Mm.
And I'm only just kind of learned how to bowl really quick again. My body subconsciously wouldn't do it because your body's quite clever at not doing something that's going to hurt itself. So it put a lot of barriers up for me to properly kind of unleash. So I had a little, I guess, mental barrier that stopped me pushing the higher speeds. So I had to learn how to bowl, how to kind of learn your craft of, right, well, I can't bowl 94 miles an hour at the moment. I can bowl 86 miles an hour. So I've got to be a lot more skillful and I've got to be a lot more accurate. So I guess you always try and look at positives when you get injured. That was a big positive for me. I learned how to bowl and I learned my skill better than just relying on how to bowl fast. So I take a lot of pride in my variations. I think it's a big part of my game, especially on wickets that suit it. And I think you're always learning new ones. I think the way people bowl and bat now, you have to keep adapting, keep learning. Batters have footage of everything. So unless you are Malinga, who was just freakishly good at a Yorker and a slow ball kind of cutter, you have to keep evolving, keep working on new skills.
And it's a batter's game, is it, as well?
It is, to be fair. But I mean, that's what puts bums on seats, isn't it? People don't come to see 60 versus 60. They want to see 180 plays 180, and that's understandable. And I guess as an all-rounder, I'd quite like to get a few runs as well. I don't want to come in on a minefield. But I think I have to admit, with the rules that the 100 brought in, there's some really good rules that help the bowlers a little bit and put a little bit of favour back in the bowler's half. So I've really enjoyed bowling in the 100 for that reason. And the tactics are a little bit different and a little bit more challenging for the batters. Because you've only got 5 balls, not 6, you can't line somebody up for the last 3 balls of the over. If you put under pressure in the first couple of balls as a batter, so if I bowl 2 dot balls in my set of 5, I know that they're heavily under pressure for the next 3. Also, the fact that you don't swap ends if there's a catch. That's, I think, it seems a very simple rule to me, because otherwise the bowler's not rewarded. If you've got, and no offence, Ross, but if you've got you batting at one end and Tim David at the other, and I'm bowling it at you, and you hit one up in the air, and you guys cross, well, that's a huge negative for me. I'd rather you miss the ball than hit it straight up in the air. So it seems like a very obvious rule, but one that's, I think, helped a lot of bowlers already in the tournaments that it's been implied in.
And the worst thing is the way in which my ego works is that I've taken that as a compliment and saying that I'm better with Tim David. I'm in the team.
Look, that is a good way to take it. On the 100, like slightly more broadly, going into the 3rd season now, it feels like it's starting to establish itself among the players. What's the vibe been? I suppose it's obviously it's sort of been slapped in there in August.
Sure.
How did it sort of land with people?
I think everyone was a bit tentative to start with, especially the first year. As all humans are, we're a bit unsure of the unknown, and people were questioning whether we needed it. Why was it there? But I have to admit, as soon as it started, everyone loved it. All the players were huge fans of it, especially. I guess it's a little bit of a new lease of life. I guess when T20 was first brought in, people thought, well, this is crap. Well, we're playing 40 over cricket and 50 over cricket. Why do we need to make a shorter one? And then after a couple of years, well, and you look at it now after 21 years, it's the most talked about and most sought after for advertising rights and TV crews, the most kind of sought after version of the game. So the lads love it. I know everyone playing really enjoys it. And from a playing point of view, we want to see crowds and we want to see young kids coming to the games. And to have, I can mainly speak for Southern Brave, but to have so many young kids, boys and girls, turn up every game, it's always packed out. They've bought into the franchise incredibly well. It didn't take long for people to be buying a lot of green shirts, a lot of Southern Brave tops, hats, whatever it was.
Bucket hats have come back in a big way.
Yeah, bucket hats are sought after commodity at the moment. So yeah, I think in the first year, teams had sold out all their merchandise within the first half of the tournament, and because they didn't order enough, they didn't think they'd sell that much. So I think it's been a huge positive for everyone, really.
And what's the relationship like with the women's team? So obviously you're all kind of under one banner. You're playing on the same day. How does that dynamic work?
I think it works quite well. Obviously, you're staying in the same hotels and have the same home ground, especially at Southern Brave because we're on the ground. at the Aegeus Bowl. You spend a lot of time kind of getting to know people, and you have team barbecues. That kind of the golf courses there. There was a lot of kind of the girls playing with the boys at golf, and a fair bit of mixing, just because you're there. I mean, if you weren't there, you're not going to do it. But because everyone is in the same hotel, I think it worked quite well too, because the coaches know everybody, and our coaches really wanted to make that kind of bond quite strong. I think it's brought us success too, because we genuinely enjoy watching them win, and they always stay behind and watch us hopefully win too. The first year we won the final and they lost it. The second year they were in the final again. So I think that relationship's very good.
Love it. When it comes to all of our questions, I think we're kind of run out now. I think we've got a couple from our Patreon. So this one's from Sudeep, and he asks around, what's the difference you've seen in the relationships across your worldwide franchises? So actually, is Glenn Maxwell as good as mates with Virat Kohli as kind of the RCB social media might say?
Sure.
Is George Garton, who is George Garton's best mate on the circuit? That's what people really want to know.
That's a good question. No one wants to be my mate. I think, yeah, because now teams are being bought and owned by the same owners. For example, CSK owns Joburg Super Kings. You've got a lot of kind of cross relations, and you're bringing in people. So that, for example, they signed Faf as their captain because they had a really good relationship with him at CSK, and there's that bond there. And so to answer your question, yeah, I think there's not a lot of put on stuff that social media teams are trying to make some people look best mates. I think the way the cricketing world now is, especially if you look at kind of the Kolkata Knight Riders, their franchise had a lot of teams in all around the world, CPL, T10, IPL, and they would pick very similar teams. There would only be a couple of maybe local lads or one or two different overseas players, but there was a strong kind of core players that they picked everywhere they went, and so those relationships naturally build. Yeah.
We still didn't answer who's your best mate, though. I mean,
best. I don't have a best mate. It's an open application, though, if anyone wants to be my best mate.
Well, from what we've heard, you're back in business. This season's going to be like almost it's your redemption arc, right? The lung sorted, you're feeling fit and firing, you're bowling fast again. You might take mine and Max's head off in the cricket net. Who knows? But overall,
no pressure then.
Yes, it seems like a good positive story for you, George.
Hopefully so. Yeah.
Good.
I mean, it's very cold and windy out there at the moment, and there's still a lot of cricket left in the summer, but it does look positive.
Good.
Well, I might even get down to Three Bridges.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that would be lovely for everybody. Well, thank you ever so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and yeah, best of luck for the season. And yeah, we'll hopefully get you back on the pod at some point in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, George.
Welcome.
Pleasure.